Okay. So, hey everyone. Thanks for making it early to our talk. So, this will be all about setting up your own project management system. And make sure to stay until the end because we will be all getting a free Notion template to help guide our process here. So, before we start, I'm just going to introduce our guest speaker for today. So, Ceej is a product manager, UX designer, and no code developer from the Philippines. He's currently the co founder of Daiki, an AI driven consumer finance platform, and a junior product manager at NextPay, a business banking solution for MSMEs. His main skills lie in product management, research, design, and no code development, coming from experience leading product teams from research to launch while designing and developing apps and websites for startups from the ground up. So Siege hopes to use technology and empathetic design to create human-centered change. So let's all welcome Siege. Take it away.
Hey, thank you, Nikki. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the introduction. So yeah, I am Ceej. So, Nikki, I can't share my screen yet.
Okay, let me fix that.
Awesome. All right.
Okay.
Let me try sharing my screen. There we go. Okay. So I'm gonna keep this talk really simple. I want to focus on like giving you guys an introduction to some project and product management concepts first. And then after that, I'll be teaching you guys how to use a basic sprint board. Then we'll be going over using that. I'll be sending you guys the template. Then I guess like we can do like so we can have more time for Q&A since project management really depends on your own context and I can't like give a whole fixed set of what to do. So yeah, let's dedicate more time to that. So again, this is Ceej, setting up your own project management system. So just a little background. I am a Manila-based founder with a passion for product management, UX, no-code, and communities. So currently working on Taiki, which Nikki mentioned, is a consumer finance platform. Also building my own digital agency for design and no-code with startups. I think one of my co-founders is here as well. And I'm also a product manager at NextPay. Also currently a no-code fellow at On Deck and the lead for Google Developer Student Clubs Loyola. And just a community with my friends for different startups in Aviato. So you guys get the reference? Good for you. So let's start off with like some PM 101. So there's often that misunderstanding or that misconception that project and product management are the same. So let's try to differentiate them a bit, even though they have their different intersections. So product management is really about vision, while project management is more about the progress and the different tasks. So product management involves product vision and strategy, product research, product roadmap, and focus and vision. So the normal day of a product manager would probably look like doing some research, talking to some customers, plotting out a roadmap, talking to the different stakeholders of a company, such as the founders, the people in the sales team, in customer delight, the UX researchers, really just trying to get a grasp of what direction the product should take. So their focus is really more on the vision of things. So on the other hand, project managers are really there to help you manage the sprints, to help you execute those projects, to establish a timeline, and their focus is on progress. So the day of a project manager might look like handling a sprint board, communicating with developers and designers about the progress of what they're doing, attending stand-ups, and doing all that. So really just managing the day-to-day things of the product as it grows while a product manager really focuses on the long term, on the overall vision. So for this talk, I'll be more focused on project management, but I'll also give some tips with product management in terms of vision and strategy, because prioritization helps you ship faster and better. So since you guys are working on all your different projects, there's a tendency, like even I have it personally, that we want to ship something good, something really great, something near to perfect, and that's kind of like it's kind of a mistake. So when you ship a product, you want to do it in an agile manner. You want to do it through iterations. You want to do it small parts at a time. So with this framework, the impact effort framework, it really gives you an idea of what features or what stuff you should focus on when launching your product, when building your project. And it really depends on how you talk to your customers, depends on the capabilities and effort that you have. So if you can see here, this graph shows the effort on the x-axis and the impact on the y-axis. And this helps you prioritize on what to work on. So if you see this section here, these are where you can find the quick wins because they're really low effort, but they make a high impact on your customers. You also have the high effort, high impact, which are the major projects. You have the low effort, low impact, which could be nice to have, and the high effort, low impact, which why would you even do that? So to help you guys see it clearer, I also created this other version of the graph that really shows how you can prioritize. So at this part here with the lowest effort and the highest impact, you want to do the quick wins. Like when you ship products, you want to do it fast. You want to get it to your customers, to your users as fast as possible to validate the idea, to test what you're building, and to iterate and improve it faster. So the quick wins, you'd want to do them immediately. Then after that, you also have the more mid to low to mid effort and mid to high impact projects, which would be, of course, like, might as well do it as well, since they are high impact and they don't require much effort. So here in section 3, you have the mid area. So this is where prioritization would come in, and this is where you want to say talk to more customers. This is where you want to talk to your stakeholders more. What would make it easier, or what would be the faster way to do this if there is? So this is where you start considering the different projects that you have, the different features that you have, and you want to make sure that you're prioritizing them and timelining and road mapping them one by one, and really just maximizing the effort and the manpower that you have within your team. Then, of course, you have the low impact, high effort. Like I mentioned earlier, why even bother to work on those? So, this simple framework here has helped me ship different products in the past. It's helped me build my startup. It's helped me build different projects for clients, really understanding how to prioritize different features. Now, let's say you're working on your own startup or project. You want to ship fast, you want to validate your idea. So, what's the lowest effort way you can do to create a high impact? So, as an example, with Taiki, the startup that we're building, we released a really simple Notion template to get that impact, to get that validations needed, that people are actually willing to pay like a small amount to find a way to track their finances. Now, if you go deeper into that, of course, you want to build an app itself. So that's around here in the high impact, high effort. So we're still going to be doing it, but we prioritize shipping something fast to get quick validation, to get quick feedback, and to get even better like responses and things to work with from the people who actually use that simple product that we built. Now, if you're building an agency, like me and Nikki here, so you also use this for your clients. For example, they have all of these different features that they want, right? And being on the other side of it, being the freelancer or being the agency, you're going to have the tendency to say, oh my gosh, this is too much. So you want to show them how to prioritize these features. So you want to start with the low effort ones with the high impact. For example, with startups right now, we're creating designs for this fintech startup, and we're really working to make sure that the ones that we initially released to our client are the lowest effort possible so they can ship faster, since that is the overall goal that they have. Then more features like integrations with different APIs, integrations with different e-wallets, like that would work better in the section 3 area since it's high impact and high effort. So whether you're starting your own project or you're doing work for a client or you're doing a personal project, you want to prioritize properly to help you build faster, to help you get feedback faster, to help you get responses faster, and then you get to iterate, improve on your product quicker. So another framework that goes really well with this impact effort one is the Moscow framework. There we go. So this shows the must have, the should have, the could have, and the won't have. So in relation to the earlier graphic that I showed, okay, sorry, my laptop was lagging a bit. So in relation to this earlier graphic that I showed, the ones that are on the quick ones and do it, are probably like going to be the must-haves because these are the stuff that are important to the users. So the only caveat to this Moscow method is how do you determine what are the must, should, and could, and won't. So this is where you have to talk a lot to your customers, talk a lot to who will be using your product, and that's how you identify that these are the must-haves. So the ones that we really need. These are the should-haves, which it's a good addition, and we might as well add it as well. The could have, which are the nice to haves, and the won't have, which are, you know, why would you even bother again? So you line these up to the impact effort framework, and you get a really good idea of how to prioritize the different features or the different parts of the project that you want to ship. So now those are pretty much the basics. So now I'm going to give you guys an example of how we in a product team actually do different what we call Scrum events. So whether you're working alone or with a team, you want to get an understanding of how projects or tasks can be time boxed into 2 week sprints. So time boxing your tasks into sprints helps you work faster. It helps you get a clear idea of the progress of your product. So, for example, right here, this is how Taiki's sprint looks like. We have sprint planning every Monday of the first week. Then we have daily stand ups every day. I'll go deeper into these later. We have sprint reviews every Friday, then more stand ups, and then we have a retrospective at the end of the day, at the end of the sprint, sorry. And this also works with next pay, but it's more adjusted. So we have sprint planning every Tuesday. We have backlog groomings mid weeks. We have retrospectives at the end of the sprint. So these really depend on how you want to set up your product team. But the point is, you want to time box your tasks into sprints to make sure that you get to work on them efficiently and you get to work on them in a specific timeline and you know the progress of the overall product. So, what are the different Scrum events? Most of these will apply if you're working with a team, but if you're working alone, it's still important to have at least like two of these to see where you're going. So, let's start with sprint planning. So, the main question that you want to ask during sprint planning is what can be delivered as part of the upcoming sprint? And how will this work deliver the product increment be? How will the work needed to deliver the product increment be achieved? So this is where you start planning that for this sprint, we have to finish this specific, we have to target this specific goal. By this sprint, we want to finish the front end for the specific feature. By this sprint, we should have finished testing this feature with our users. By this sprint, we should have released this into staging or production. So you want to set an overall goal by the end of the sprint. Check your tickets or your store or your tasks and make sure you put them into that sprint that you're going to be doing. So I'll be showing more like detailed versions of these later when I demo how a sprint board looks like. So now you also have the daily stand-ups. So these are short 10 to 15-minute meetings depending on the size of your team, just to catch up and to check how you're doing with the sprint. So how are you feeling today? What did you do yesterday? What will you be working on today? And do you have any blockers? Now, often the one that's often overlooked is any blockers because that's really important and people don't often like are often shy or often hold back on sharing what their blockers are. But when you're working with a team, it's important to communicate these properly because that helps you move more efficiently and it helps you resolve that blocker with the help of your other teammates. So it's basically how the daily stand up works. You do it every day until the end of the sprint. Some of my teams, we do it asynchronously, so through chat. Some of my teams, you do it sync in call. Depends on the dynamic of your team. So we also have the sprint review. This is like the midpoint of the sprint where you discuss as a team what's been done so far. And you can also do some demos here. So this way, with the stuff that you've been working on so far, you can get feedback, you can get comments, and you can make the necessary revisions or iterations that you need to mid-sprint before you actually turn this over at the end of the sprint. So in Taiki, we do sprint reviews to help show each other the progress so far with the UI that we're designing, with the front end screens that we're developing, and stuff like that. With my other projects, we just demo even the back end. So just showing that this specific feature works on the back end, showing that this bug has been cleared. You want to celebrate even the smallest wins during your sprint review just to see how far you've come as a team. Or if you're working on your own, how far you've come like since you've started building the product. Now, the last part of the sprint would be the retrospective, where you want to reflect on what's been done throughout the entire sprint. So you ask yourself, what went well during the sprint? We were able to finish this. This specific process was really efficient, so we were able to work faster. We onboarded a new team member, so that's going to give us additional manpower. Those are stuff that could have gone well. What did not go well? We underestimated the sprint, so we started delaying a lot of our features, so we could do better with that. Which leads to the next one. What can we do better? Maybe let's have a new structure to how we estimate our tasks. Maybe we have a new structure to how we allocate or assign different tasks to people depending on their capacity. And after that, you're going to list down what your actionable items are, which basically are the stuff that you want to improve on during the next sprint. So the retrospective serves as your lessons. Like it serves as your lesson base from that specific sprint and stuff that you can bring to your next one, depending on what you experienced, what you finished, whether it was good or bad. And that way, you're not just improving the product, you're also improving your processes and operations within your company, your team, or yourself. So now those are the basic things that you can get from a Scrum event. But now I'm going to be demoing how to use the sprint board. So there are a lot of different sprint or like task management tools out there. You have Jira, you have Trello, you have Shortcut, you have Kite Maker. But personally, those are expensive, especially for student startup, right? So I replicated Shortcut, which is the project management software that NextPay uses into Notion. So I'll be changing the screen that I'm sharing so you guys could see it. And here we go. All right. So this will be the template that I'll be releasing soon. So you guys get really access to it. But I'll also show you how it works. So when you have a sprint, you have these different things. You have the milestones, which are basically the different large overarching tasks that you have. You also have your epics, which are more of a broken down version of a milestone. Then you still want to break this down into different stories for you to work on. So this is the system that I learned from NextPay. It's not one system, like it's not the complete source of truth, but this is what I personally use, and it's been effective for the teams that I've worked with so far. So I'll start by demoing like how milestones work. So, for example, you want to release your product's first iteration. That might be a milestone. So let's call it MVP V1. Then maybe another milestone that we'll possibly have is payment integrations. Then another milestone that we can possibly have would be revised onboarding. So when we say milestones, these are the really big projects that you want to tackle as a company or as a product team. And that way that you can easily break these down even more. So let's say under the first MVP, we have different features, right? So what would possibly be features for an MVP? Um, Onboarding version 1. We can also have a dashboard. Then we could also have, let's say, the main feature. Let's say we're doing Taiki. We have the transactions and the budget, right? So now that you have these epics, you'll be able to see, like, for example, with this MVP V1, you'll be able to see the progress of how your epics are doing so far. Now, let's go deeper into this. Let's go to one of the epics. Kunwari naman with the onboarding version 1. You want to use this template that I made. With this onboarding, what are the different stuff that we can break down from onboarding? So you have the actual like login flow. You can have the sign up flow. Given this is fintech, you want your KYC flow, which is know your customer, basically the verification that you do. Then what else can we have in an onboarding? I guess we can stick with these muna, right? So now we were able to break down these tasks. Like let's take a step back. Let's circle back to the Let's circle back to the milestones from earlier. So now what we have here is we have a milestone about accomplishing the version 1 of the MVP. Then we have an epic, which is a part of the MVP version 1, which is the onboarding. Then under the onboarding, we have these different flows that we want to work on. Let's say for this one, this is just the design pa lang. Design KYC, design login, design sign up. Then you also have the dev side. So develop those flows, for example. So now you were able to break down that one big milestone that you have into a feature. Then you broke down that feature into its different parts, and that helps you align it with a sprint, and it helps you do things more efficiently. Now, going to the stories database naman, you'll see that we have 4 stories under the onboarding version 1. So we have design sign up, design login, design KYC. Now, let's say nag-sprint planning tayo today and we decided na these are the stuff that we want to do. But before that, you also want to make sure that these are cleaned up. So, for example, for design sign up, you want the owner of, let's say I'm the owner of this task. So I'm going to go and assign to this. Then this is my first sprint. So let's make the sprint 1. And then for my sprint period, since it's 2 weeks, let's say from January 24 to February 4, then I'm going to move it to our backlog, to our current sprint. So another thing that you want to do is you want to estimate how the weight of the different tasks that you have. So for example, this design sign up, I'm gonna say like as an estimate, this is probably a little mid because you have the actual sign up page, but you also want to consider like password requirements, how you could possibly do that. So there are different ways to estimate. There are some set manuals out there that show you, for example, how many points something is worth. But in the companies that I work for and the startup that I'm working on, we follow a Fibonacci sequence. So what we use, the numbers that we use are 1, 2, 3, 5, and 8. So these are the stuff that we use to estimate our tasks. And for example, for this design sign up, I'm gonna say it's a 2. And it's a feature. So I'll work on that. So that way, you know that this is what you're going to be working on during the sprint. I'm going to hide the sprint number. There we go. So this is what I'm going to be working on in the sprint. Then you'll also see like as a general thing, you'll see the different statuses. You'll see the different info of the stories that you make. So I'm going to hide the status as well there. So now during a sprint planning, you're going to want to like let's say move specific tasks to a specific flow to a specific sprint, and you're going to be working on these throughout 2 weeks. So the only caveat is this: you have to update it every time you work. So let's say I'm already designing the sign up, I'm going to move it there. Then all right, I'm good. I want my team to review what I'm working on, so I'll move it for review. Then after that, I'll move it to completed once it's good. So we also have a block column right here to like indicate, let's say for KYC, given how hard this feature is, I'm going to move this to block. I need more help from the devs to understand the flow that we're going to be doing. So when you move something to the blocked section, this is where it's going to help you communicate to your team that you need their help, that you need their support in something that you might need to meet to get rid of this blocker. Now, that's like a general overview of how it looks. Now, right, it looks pretty simple right now, but I'm going to show you guys how it looks for Taiki. So, to the Taiki people here, sorry, kidding. So, this is how our sprint board looks like for Taiki. Since we have different departments, we also subgrouped it by the different departments that we have now, and our sprints are here. You can also see a total of the story points that we're currently doing. You'll see what we're working on, and you'll see how much we completed in a specific sprint. So just gonna flex that we finished 68 story points this sprint. So how does this look naman? So for example, you've been working on your product for a while now. You've been using this sprint board for a while. If you view your sprint as a table, you can already, this is also in the template, you'll be able to see what are the different stuff you've worked on. You'll see a summary of everything you've done, how much you've completed in a specific sprint. And like what are stuff that you have to do pa. So this is like this has been going on since September, since August. So this is how like a sprint board would look like when a sprint database would look like once you have it more established. So let's go back to the stories here. You'll see that, for example, here in product, I'll expose it a bit. Hashtag build in public. So you'll see how we have different stuff here. Example, for this current sprint, we still have these four things: design the homepage, design the insights, design onboarding flow. So I'm gonna move this to in progress because I started on this last night. But basically, like you have your backlog here, which is just a dump of all the stuff that you plan to work on. You have your current sprint, which is the stuff that you plan to work on in the next 2 weeks. You have in progress, you have blocked. In our case, we also have staging and QA because we're also working with the devs now on this. Then we have test failed in case the review needs revisions. So the template that I made is heavily customizable naman. So going back here, if you want to add more columns, if you want to add more like statuses, then feel free to do it. You can just do it here. Let's say you want to add a staging column. So you can do it as easy as that. So basically that's how you use a sprint board. Like there's a lot of functionality to it, but I'll be once I release this template, I'll be giving you guys free access to it through a code. I'm probably releasing this tonight. I just need to clean up a few more things. But once you're able to use this, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. And you just have to really understand how like the different statuses that would fit for the company that you're working on, for the project that you're working on, and basically understand how to break down tasks even further based on priority, based on what consists of a specific thing. Like let's actually do another example. For example, with payment integrations, what are some of the possible epics I have here? So kunwari naman next pay. So you have send it integration, which is for the payment methods, then Ayana integration, lol. And then let's say you also want to link your BPI. Just as an example, you want to link your BPI na lang pala. You also want Union Bank integration. So these are all epics that you can break down further. So for example, let's go to send it integration. What are some of the subtasks that you're gonna have to do for that? Um, from the top of my head, I mean, first you're gonna have to create an account with Send It, then possibly design the screens for this integration, and then actually implement or like create the API calls needed for this. So there are different ways to phrase your stories, but you just have to write down. And thank you, Nikki, for explaining the fintech stuff. I'm sorry that I'm just going through it, but yeah, there's a lot of different stuff you can do with this template. It's really flexible as well. I'll be adding more functionalities to this, and I'll also be adding a manual on how to use it. So I actually have started working on a manual before. I just have to like clean up because the last time I updated this manual was July. So it has the definition of terms as to what the product boards are. It has the stuff in the epics and stories. It has a definition of each column in the Kanban, and it explains each types of this, like each parts of the sprint for you. So what's a sprint planning? What's a stand up? What's a sprint review? What's a retrospective? So I just need to clean this up. Then I'll be able to give this to all of you for free, which is awesome. We love free stuff. Yeah. So now I'm gonna end my talk in a bit. So I'll be sharing another screen again. So let's go back to Figma. Just some last tips on like project management. If you're working on a personal project or working with a team, some of the productivity hacks, given I'm working on like four different things plus school. So these are the stuff that I do to help me finish all the tasks on time and to make sure that I stay sane. So I always time block the night before. If you look at my calendar, I really make sure that I know my schedule before I sleep. I also make sure I have enough time for deep work, which leads to the next point. We can have a lot of meetings as managers, product managers, project managers, even designers. Ang daming meetings niyan. So you need to make sure that you dedicate time to deep work. So deep work is basically like what 2, 3, 4 hours of you just working on your product on whatever you're building deeply. Deeply. What? Just dedicate the time to deep work so you have time to work on your actual product. Then another thing that's helpful is co-working calls. So as someone who can get lazy at times, I make sure that I have people working with me in co-working calls so I can be held accountable and peer pressure. If your friends are working, then might as well you also work. And lastly, like very generic or like very cliche, but the Pomodoro has been really helpful for me, especially with school. Like I'm lazy because for school, so I'm gonna do that so I have structure to it. But yeah, so these are some productivity hacks that I do to help me manage all the projects and all the different tasks that I have. So that's pretty much it. Thank you. And yeah, feel free to ask questions. Take it away, Nikki. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Ceej. Really enjoyed that. I was just about to ask now if you had a glossary of those terms because I know some people are going to get confused between milestones and epics and all that. So thank you for concluding that in your template. So yeah, to anyone who has questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and I'll read it out. But I guess I can start. So I guess I'm curious, since that was mostly in the context of a startup, was there ever a time where you had to apply it to a personal context? Could you tell us if there's any experience like that?
Yeah, so when I was still CPAG with school, I'd actually like also apply the Kanban to my different schoolwork. So like I mentioned, I'm juggling a number of things. So I used to have a personal Kanban that really follows it, but eventually I just got too lazy to maintain it. So I stuck myself with the time blocking and the calendaring. But yeah, like this whole idea, like for example, with milestones, epics, and stories, and just breaking down your tasks can really be helpful for schoolwork, for your personal projects as well. So, for example, with school, like let's say my milestone is survive the first semester. Then my epics could be the subjects, and then the stories are the different requirements. So as long as you understand how to break down the different tasks that you have, then it's going to work well with the board that you'll be getting from that template. Yeah.
Same. That was my only goal for second sem to survive. And yeah, personally, I've tried that system to make the epics the classes. So if anyone wants to try that out as well, feel free to ask us questions about the template. So Jake has an interesting question, which is also related to one of mine. So ideally, how long should the idea generation or play portion be? What portion of the sprint? And I'm guessing this relates to the first two frameworks you showed at the beginning. So where do those fit into your process?
Mm-hmm. So when we were starting off Taiki and doing all that product strategy, road mapping, we actually dedicated the entire sprint Muna to that since technically we were still at the start. So we were still establishing the product and all of that. So we took the whole sprint to do research, to prioritize, and to roadmap. But eventually, once you're like example, you got your product off the ground, like I'd say you'd have to like properly balance it. Like of course, so you already have your devs working on your old features. Now the PMs and the UX researchers can work together to like dedicate one half of the sprint to research or a whole sprint to research, then a half sprint to all the ideation and analysis workshops, then go from there. Although that's just a personal thing, like it really depends on the context of your team and how you're building your product. Yeah.
Got it. And I guess before we move on to Paco's question, how do you decide how long your sprint is at all?
On a whim. Joke. um, so there are different. The standard is usually 2 weeks. Like some of the biggest tech companies, like let's say Google, they really do 2 week sprints, sometimes 3 weeks. It depends on their end. So for us, because at Taiki, we always default to a 2 week sprint. But let's say we need to make an adjustment to our calendar, depending on the high level timeline. So, for example, something got delayed. So we'll push things back a bit and dedicate a 1 week sprint to catch up on everything. So an example of that would be last December. So during December, we worked a bit slower because of finals. So after finals and after Christmas week, we dedicated December 27 to New Year. Basta that week, to a 1 week sprint just to catch up on the different stuff that we missed. Then come New Year, we started with 2 week sprints again. So like I always say it, but it really depends on the context of your whole team. It really depends on your timeline. It depends on the target dates that you're after. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you for that. So, Paco asks, since this template or Scrum works well with people who know how to use it already, like people who are familiar with startups,
Mhm.
do you have any tips for introducing this practice to a team who has no idea how to do Scrum, let alone use the template itself?
Mhm. So we encountered that problem when we were kicking off Pavilion, a project that GDSC Loyola was building. So initially we were a team of 4 and all of us knew how to use the sprint board, but we onboarded a new team of 16 of 16 people who didn't know how to use the sprint board. So what we did there was I had the PMs hold a workshop with the different members, the new people on board, teach them how to use the sprint board, and basically had them read the manual asynchronously as well, just so they could get a clear understanding. But the thing is, with something like this, we always say it's trial by fire. Like you can explain all the concepts that you want, you can demo how it works, but the only way that you'll really know how to use it is by actually using it. Like I think the people at NextPay who are here, Jake, Thea, and Nikki, we were lost with shortcut when we got into it. But when we started using it, that's when we got an idea of how it all works. So maybe onboard them by giving them a high level overview of how things work. But eventually, like once they're the ones using the sprint board, they're gonna get a little used to it now, and eventually, like it's gonna be part of the routine. And same, I still get lost with shortcuts sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, so as Ceej said, this is something we've been having a hard time then with onboarding our new hires since it takes quite a while not to get used to and to explain all of those terms. So I hope the glossary speeds it up a little bit for the people who are here. Um, yeah, if anyone has questions, again, feel free to DM me. I'm curious since you do work on a bunch of different projects from, Taiki and then stuff like Pavilion or the agency. How do you handle like all of them at once? Do you have separate systems for all of those, or is there anything that kind of helps bring those together?
Mhm. My calendar brings everything together. So, like I mentioned, I time block the night before. I also make sure, like, okay, these are the stuff that are needed today. These are the stuff that I need to finish by this week. And basically, like my calendar really helps me understand what I need to work on. So I'm staring at my calendar right now. Let's say from Thursday. So in the morning until the afternoon, I have next pay. Then I had a DSC thing at in the afternoon, and then I dedicated the rest of my night to Taiki deep work. So Google Calendar plus the tasks, like the task section in GCal, are really what's driving me these days. But another app I suggest, if for example you have a lot of calendars, like not just on one email, check out Cron. Yes. So Cron has been my lifesaver since I started with it. They're on early access right now. So try to apply for that and wait for the next batch of people they onboard. But it's a really great product that's helped me like really calendar, really know what my tasks are. Of course the boards that they're actually in each of the different projects. Like we have a pavilion board, we have the Taiki board, next pay on shortcut. But for me personally, like I just filter those boards to see what I own, like the tasks I own. Then I lay them out on Google Calendar every night or at the start of the week. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you for that. Yeah, actually, something I just remembered now is another way to apply like this whole Scrum Agile structure to your lives is another template that one of our members, Bianca, made for personal OKRs. So I'm just
Yeah.
gonna drop down in the chat if anyone wants to check that out. So yeah, we have time for a few more questions. So again, last call for anyone who has that. For me, just something I heard you mention earlier that there are times when you underestimate or overestimate your tasks or your sprints. So, do you have any tips for getting better at that?
Mhm. So what I did or what we did with NextPay and what I did with Taiki is we're writing a guide on, like, for example, what constitutes a one, what constitutes a two, what constitutes a five. So what in those guides you also indicate like what are the possible tasks that they could be doing. Like maybe it could be research that's a little more out of something you need to scope out a bit more. It could be a direct thing that you just have to make this really quick UI design fix. It can be a simple bug in the front end. Then you also provide examples. Like for example, with one, it's possibly just a change in font size. With two, it might be a straightforward design fix. With five, you might need to do a bit more research, coordinate with more stakeholders. So there are different guides out there. GitLab is a personal favorite. They have their own guide with story point estimation, so you could use that. Yeah, basically just make sure you have a guide if you're getting lost with estimating. Also record your progress. So for example, how many points did you not finish in a sprint? So that way you also get an understanding of your overall velocity or the overall speed that you have as a team. And understand that okay, our velocity is pretty low. Like average natin is 40% completion. So maybe we need to adjust our estimations a bit more because we're underestimating everything. So yeah.
Thank you for that. So yeah, I think that is all the questions I have. For anyone else, if you do have follow-up ones, we have a Discord server where you can drop them there and then I will forward them to Ceej for you. But yeah, that is the whole of our talk. Thank you so much to everyone who's been here. And to Ceej, of course, for sharing your knowledge and later the Notion template. So any last call to action, Ceej, or where can people find you, your work?
Yeah. Feel free to follow me, Ceej Atienza on Twitter. I post stuff about product and design. And for the template, Nikki, can I give you the access code na lang and the link once it's uploaded? Then feel free to download it. Yeah. Then reach out to me if you have any questions on how to use it. Yeah.
All
Thanks
right.
for
So
the
yeah,
plug.
I'll email everyone and then after this, all the attendees with the link and the code. So yeah, that is all. Before we go, can we have a group picture lang to anyone who can turn on their cameras? Okay.